When I was playing indoor, the amount of things that I had to go through with indoor volleyball
Yeah.
was more than any athlete should have to. And it was almost like God was like, hey, we're doing this because I'm preparing you for something greater. It's going to be harder, but here you go. Like, you're going to have to fight this adversity. You're going to have to fight through all this BS. I think about it often. I'm like, was I even supposed to play as long as I did? Because there were so many things, so many signs that it was like God was like, hey, it's time. Like, this isn't your path anymore. And I just kept fighting it. I was like, nope, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. And it was almost like God finally was like, okay, here's cancer, because you're obviously not getting it. The first time that I really truly felt like, okay, my hands are up, was when I was diagnosed.
Hello, my name is Aaron Wexler, and welcome to another episode of Within the Game. Let's go. Within the Game is all about how to treat your craft and your life like a game so that you can stay inspired, have more fun, be on the path of becoming the best version of yourself, and find fulfillment both in and out of your game. We talk personal growth, mindset expansion, and share inspiration. Let's go. And thank you to the listener for being on this podcast journey with me and helping me make this podcast possible. It really has changed my life, and I'm just so happy that you guys are along for the ride. Please subscribe, like, and share. It really does help me out. And today's guest is the one and only, the water wizard, Jennifer Keddy. Jen, I'm a big fan. I'm so excited to have you here. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited about our conversation today.
Let's go, Keddy. Long time coming. Full circle moment here. So at age 26, Jennifer Keddy was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in the middle of a professional indoor volleyball season in Germany. She was then rushed back home to Montana and underwent emergency surgery. And 4 months after a grueling chemo regimen, her chemo left her with numerous side effects, including many that would prevent her from playing volleyball again, seemingly, right? She was determined to find a solution, and that she did. She was introduced to living structured water by a friend. And within a week of having her structured water machine, almost all of her side effects were gone. 5 years later, she's running a 6-figure business known as the Water Wizard, and now an AVP champion. Visit her Instagram to follow her story and learn more at Genuine Waters. Jen, let's go. Let's go, Keddy.
Go. What a journey. Yeah, I just want to preface that I'm not a doctor. Those are not medical claims. That's my personal testimony. And of course, everyone's different. So, it's just water. I'm just such a water advocate because I think it's so important to the foundation of our health and our body. And if we are providing our bodies with the right environment, they can heal themselves. They can regenerate. It's like how it's supposed to be. So yeah, I just want to reiterate that, and I'm excited to talk more about it.
Absolutely. Just a couple more accolades before we really get into it. A Division I and professional indoor volleyball athlete from 2009 to 2019, two-time All-American, 2012 Big West Player of the Year, AVP Player 2021 to the present, and 2022 Central Florida AVP Champ. Let's go, Keddy. Keddy, let's just start with this question I always ask everybody who comes on. Inspired living. What does that mean to you?
Oof, that is a great question, and I feel like people don't talk about it enough. It could go two ways for me. I think inspired living, is living a life that inspires other people, right? So people look at you and they're like, wow, that is incredible. I want what they're having. First and foremost, though, is like inspiring yourself. Like, you have to live a certain way. You have to live in alignment with yourself in order for that to be projected onto others, right? So like living in alignment, meaning doing what you love. And I know that sounds so cliche and cheesy, but it's like, my thing now is turning your passion into purpose, impact to income. Like, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, the money will flow, So I think for me, inspired living is like following my calling, which again is like, sounds so cheesy, but I think deep down we all know what we are called to do and what we're good at, our gifts. And like, for me, it's like, I want to make people laugh. I want to make people laugh. I also want to make money. So I'm a businesswoman, but I share the things that I share different from anyone that I know, and like, that's what I think inspired living means.
Let's go. I love it. And what it does for me is it just makes me realize that, like, you got to be living your passion in everything that you do, right? Like, and there's so much to be. This whole project started back when we were in China, which we'll talk about in a second. But this whole thing is like you could look around and just find inspiration everywhere, but really it starts in here. It starts inside,
Yep.
you know, and maybe you could carry that further to the inspired athlete, right? Because that's kind of the whole message that I've put forth in my book, The Inspired Athlete. But I love talking to other inspired athletes like you. Like, what does that mean to you, inspired athlete?
Inspired athlete. Well, I think about my athletic journey, and it got to a point where I was desperate. Like I wasn't doing it because I loved it anymore. I was doing it because it's all I knew, and it's all that I thought that I could do. So it became this desperate point of my life where it's like I have to find another contract. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I don't want to sit in an office, so I'm just going to keep doing this even though it's not really supplying me with the things that I need in my life to be happy. Um and it wasn't until I got really, really sick and I had to change my perspective on everything, right? That long story short brought me to other things that I do for a living. And now I get to be an athlete that having a healthy body and being able to perform inspires me.
Mm.
And like, I'm just grateful to be able to do it at this point, that it's no longer a job for me. It's just literally, I love doing this. And every day I wake up and I'm excited to like train and work out and eat healthy and fuel my body because I get to do it. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
yes, Keddy. And how about alignment with your true self? For me, that comes up when you speak like that. Alignment with your true self. How does that tie into being an inspired athlete?
Well, and nowadays, being an athlete is incredible. Like having a body to be able to do the things you do, having a skill, having a gift, like an athletic gift is beautiful. And especially for women, I want them to know that like it's awesome being a female athlete. I think so quickly it turns into a job and it turns
Mm.
into a stressor in our life to where we have to do it because we don't know what else to do, right? We've done it for so long that now that's all I know. Also, it can become this like cycle of I have to look a certain way, I have to eat a certain way, I have to be a certain way in order to be this level of athlete. Um, and it was like when I released all of the expectations and all of the stress and all of the just pressure of like, I have to get another contract. This is all I know how to do. When I found my true passion, my true purpose through my business and just health in general, now I get to live in alignment with like, this is a gift that I have. This is what I love to do. And my platform grows because of it, which then I get to make more of an impact through my other works. And
Mm.
like, that's like living in alignment for me is like, volleyball is just a tool. Volleyball is a tool. And it's also just like a release at this point. And again, I'm just grateful to be able to do it still.
Let's go. All right, so let's just give some listeners a little background. So we actually met on a movie set.
We're
And
actors.
yeah, we are. No, we met on a movie set for this really cool movie called Leap. And this movie took place in Beijing pre-pandemic. And back then it was really interesting because that was kind of the start of my journey of like, man, I had this message inside me. I remember talking with Victoria Garrick. She was on set with us too. And she was doing all this kind of stuff. And I was like, man, there's something inside me and it wants to be evoked through this messaging. And so I remember meeting you back then and you were just like, you're a baller. And I was like, man, I think you should play beach. I remember telling you I had this like vision of you out there on the beach. And fast forward later, now you just won an AVP championship. Wow. To talk to me a little bit about winning and how did that feel after everything you've been through?
Uh, it was just very divine. It was on the 5-year anniversary, not on the exact date, but the month. So it was December of 2017 that I had my emergency surgery to remove the tumor. And it was like 5 years later. which is that's a big deal for a cancer patient. It's like the 5-year mark is like, get to that and you're pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So it was just very divine that on my 5-year anniversary, I like go and win the AVP Championship, when it was like, 5 years ago, rewind. If you would have told me that I would have been an AVP champion, a 6-figure business owner, like all these things, I would have laughed in your face.
This episode is brought to you by new sponsor of the show, Ready Fit Go. Ready Fit Go is a new meal prep company based out of Hermosa Beach, California, and they offer delicious and nutritious pre-made meals that cater to everyday people, athletes, and entrepreneurs. If you're like me, taking time to go to the grocery store, cook, and do meal prep in a healthy way can be a challenge. Ready Fit Go provides a great solution to this challenge, as they offer over 70 options, from hot meals to salads to desserts to snacks, and they offer a wide range of choices for all types of dietary needs. Ready Fit Go is offering Within the Game listeners 30% off their entire menu. Go to rfghealthyfoods.com and use code GAME30. That's capital G, lowercase a, M-E, the number 30 for the discount. Also, if you are near Hermosa Beach, you can check out their store in person to see all their options. They are located at 1025 Pacific Coast Highway in Hermosa Beach, California. Thank you, Ready Fit Go, for sponsoring the episode. Let's go!
I would have absolutely laughed in your face. So just winning that and being able to share my story with more people was just really, really cool.
So cool. And it's inspiring, right? It's inspiring. Yeah. Your whole story is inspiring, going from almost like, I heard you in another podcast talking about hitting rock bottom, and really, going through this process of treatment and chemo and, and getting back and able to, and coming back stronger, right? A lot of times we as athletes, we go through injury and, we hear that little voice inside of our head, which is like, can I do this? It's like almost like a self-doubt. Should I do this? Should I just stop? Right. But then there's another voice that says, let's go, right? Come on, let's go. Let's come back. Let's get back. And let's not just come back. Let's come back stronger. Right. And that's what you did. And that's why it's so inspiring. And I want to explore that process a little bit more, but first, let's just talk about the win, because we really need to acknowledge you for that. And winning in anything is difficult, right? But winning, coming from an indoor career, transferring to the beach, that's very difficult, So we need to acknowledge that. I need to acknowledge that for you. So let's just talk about that a little bit. Talk about the finals. Did you find the flow? Now, before you answer, this is something I ask a lot of people that come on the podcast, but this whole idea of flow, right? Where like almost time stops a little bit. You're just so focused in the moment. Explore that a little bit. What does that mean? And did you find it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Flow state is like what I think about.
Yeah.
And I think about almost the whole weekend. It's almost like I felt like we time traveled. Like you're so present and you're so in the moment, but you're also like, it's almost like out of body. Like things were just happening. Like it was just, and it's so funny because so many people have asked me, they're like, how did it feel? How did it feel? And I'm like, honestly, I don't even I'm still in shock. It's very surreal. And I don't even know how to explain it, but the entire weekend was just like, it was so easy. And I don't mean that in like the other teams were bad. I mean it in the sense that like Carly and I don't know, I don't want to speak for her, but like for me, there was literally no stress. There was no thinking about, oh, we're going to lose. Even if we were losing a set, it was like, there was never a point that we were like stressed or worried about losing. Like it was just this like relaxed next point flow. And I honestly don't even know how to explain it further from that, because we were like, for me, I was just like so in this state of like, next point, we're present, we're here. I literally don't know how to explain it.
No, it's so cool. And for people listening, I want to make this relatable, because not everyone's going to be an AVP champion, but there's a way to be a champion in life. There's a way to be a champion in your day, right?
Yes.
Can you talk about that? Can you talk about champion mindset? How you can relate winning this tournament and calling yourself a champion now to just, carrying that over to everyday life?
I wish that I had like more of a profound answer to that, but I just think it's your mindset. Every single day you wake up is like, if you are grateful to wake up,
Mm,
which I think a lot of people forget and we take for granted so much, is like being grateful to wake up and do whatever you're doing. And if you're not happy, then maybe that's a time to like self-reflect and be like, what would make me happy? Like, what am I doing right now that's not making me happy? My boyfriend and I, my boyfriend, he was like, let's do an exercise. And it was like making a list at night of all the things that you didn't enjoy during the day and all the things that you did. And then
mm,
it's like doing that every single day and figuring out what you don't like. If there's a consistent pattern of things you don't like especially your job that you're spending a lot of time at, then that's where we have to be like, okay, something needs to change, and I will never forget the quote that someone said to me was like, it's harder to change when you're winning.
mm.
Sometimes we have to hit rock bottom in order to then be able to change this perspective to like, wow, I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to do what I'm doing. I'm grateful to have a home. I just think it starts there. Like that's the foundation.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have this champion mindset going into that tournament?
Oh no. I wasn't even supposed to be at this tournament. I wasn't even supposed to be at the tournament. I had like said no, and I had like some business stuff. And yeah, long story short, was just not supposed to be there.
It's
So when Carly, oh, go ahead.
no, go, no, please go.
I was just gonna say when Carly reached out to me and I had already been like, no, I'm not going. Like I was in off-season mode. I hadn't trained. I was like, no, like I'm done. And so when she asked me, I was like, okay, maybe, we can get in with points. And in my head, I was like, there's no way we're getting in with just points, right? Well, we do. And we're just like sixth seed. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess we are in. So at that point, it was like, okay, now you're in, but your mind, like my mind was out. Like I was like, this has not been my focus, right? So I was just like, okay, like we're just gonna go play for fun. We've never played together, we've never practiced, whatever. So then she comes, but it's funny because that was my mindset. Like literally, I was like, we're going just for fun. And I was like, I almost told her that I can't go because I was so scared to let her down because I
Mm,
knew mentally I was not like invested. Like I wasn't training and I was just like, well, I guess we're going for funsies. And so when she flew here to practice with me a couple days before, she actually was sick, like got food poisoning. And so we couldn't even practice. There was like a day that we were able to practice for like an hour and a half, nothing crazy, just super light. And it was like, okay, I guess we're going. But when I picked her up from the airport, when she came to Austin, the first thing I said to her was, how funny would it be if we just went and won this thing? I was like, we're both so relaxed,
let's
so
go.
chill. Like, how funny would it be if we just went and won? And she was like laughing. She was like, that would be hilarious. And we were just like, obviously both of us were just relaxed, right? And so I just kept saying that though. Like, I don't even know where it came from, but it was like, I then flew to meet her in Florida. She picks me up from the airport and I said, we're going to win this thing. I was like,
Wow.
we're winning. And I just like kept saying it. And it's like, you say things like that, but do you really believe it? So it was just
Mm,
like, I don't know where it was coming from, but I just was saying it over and over again. And that was my mindset. So like, I guess, yes, to answer your question, there was a little bit of champion mindset of like, yeah, let's just go win. But then there was also this other side of like imposter syndrome where I didn't feel like I was good enough to be there. I didn't feel like I was ready to play. I didn't want to disappoint Carly. Like there were all these things coming through. And then at the end of the day, though, it was just, let's go play volleyball. Like
yeah,
we know how to play volleyball
yeah,
and let's just go be excited to play volleyball and happy and grateful that we even get to be here. Like, how
right.
cool is this? And
So
I had a
cool.
friend tell me one day, she was like, whenever you feel really, really nervous, just switch it to gratitude, because
Mm,
fear and gratitude can't exist in the same space. And I was like, wow,
love
that's
that.
really good.
That's powerful.
Said that to me, and I was like, cool. So
Yeah.
again, it all comes down to gratitude.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I so relate because we can all get caught up, right? We caught up in the results, caught up in the
Yes.
process, caught up in what we look like, caught up in all and the emotions, caught up, right?
Yep.
But if we can just come back to that gratitude, that's super powerful. And the reason why I asked you if you went into that tournament with that mindset is because a lot of times champions, have expectation, right? We
Yes.
expect that we're going to win. We expect we're going to do well, right? We have that expectation in a healthy way. Sometimes it can be a little bit non-healthy because it's like overpowering.
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting to explore is the idea of expectation and surrender at the same time, right?
Yeah.
I think that's when we can sometimes find the flow state where we're just having fun and just like being in it, right? Like, yes, we're expecting to win. We really want to win. We have the desire and the intention, but at the same time, it's like whatever happens, happens. I'm super grateful to be here. Let's go. Right.
Yeah.
Can you talk
Yes.
about the midpoint there? Because I think that's a really powerful place to be.
Well, I also feel like the surrender is, you have the expectations, the surrender is, that you're going to go out there and do your best, whatever that looks like in that moment, you're doing it. So you can't control everything about the game. Sometimes you just have a bad day, right? And it's like checking out of that and getting back into your flow state is super, super hard. When you just surrender to whatever's happening and whatever's going on, I think that is where you release the expectation of being perfect.
Right.
I know every
Right.
athlete wants to be perfect, but those expectations, I think, honestly break so many athletes.
Right.
And that's where the stress comes in. And that's where the flow state does not exist, because you're so worried about being this perfect player and showing up perfectly and doing everything perfect. And you have to win. You're expected to win. It was like Carly and I went into that tournament. I mean, no expectations. People didn't expect us to win. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right. Right.
Like,
Right. Right.
who were we? People barely wanted to practice with us. Like, we were just like, oh, there's Jen and Carly, so there was no expectation. However, it was like, hey, we're going to win this thing. But then there was the surrender of like, let's just go play volleyball.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's honestly, I think, where the magic happens.
Yeah. I want to talk about your journey battling cancer, but just the last part of this journey of winning that I want to ask you about, which is this moment that I remember you ball falls, you realize you won. And it's like that moment almost makes me emotional thinking about it, because I've had a similar moment like that. But like I want to ask you about that specific moment, and then the moment where Mark Sherman's interviewing you and you're just like, what just happened? Like those two moments, I think people are really curious about, because those are like, they just come, right? And then they're gone. But like really talk about those for a second.
Um,
Especially after everything you've been through, right? Which we're gonna touch on, but like,
yeah,
yeah.
honestly, it was like when we won, I literally was like, holy shit. Right? Like, sorry, I cussed, but like, that's the only way I know to explain it, was like,
Yeah.
holy shit. And then it's like, it's like I start thinking about, I mean, I knew this tournament was important, right? Like I was like, wow, this is 5 years, like so cool. Like, look at the person I've become. And now I'm just here playing in AVP, and now I'm in the championship. Like, this is wild stuff. And I just think it was a holy shit moment. Like it was a very surreal moment of like, did I just win? And of course that then translates into the interview with Mark, where he's like, how does it feel to say that you're an AVP champion? And Carly and I just start laughing, because we were like, what? Like it was like, wait, no way. Like there's no other way to explain it other than like, those were the most genuine feelings that we could have possibly had in that moment. And there was no like faking it. Like he was asking us these questions and we were just like little kids, like, oh my gosh, we won, um Yeah, it was just so surreal. I kept being like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. But it's like, yeah, you can, because you said it all weekend.
So I was watching from my home here in Los Angeles, and I was getting emotional because I know your backstory, and let's talk about that now. Everything that you've been through, Jen, to lead up to that moment, it was kind of, for me, from my perspective, it was kind of like the universe just saying, here you go. You're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Right. You got through some
Yes.
really tough stuff. I see you. Here's a little wink. Keep it up, kid.
Yeah.
you know?
Well, yeah. I mean, talk about surrender. When I was playing indoor, the amount of things that I had to go through with indoor volleyball
Yeah.
was more than any athlete should have to.
Yeah.
And it was almost like God was like, hey, we're doing this because I'm preparing you for something greater
Right.
that's going to be harder. But here you go. Like, you're going to have to fight this adversity. You're going to have to fight through all this BS. And maybe this isn't, I think about it often. I'm like, was I even supposed to play as long as I did? Because there were so many things, so many signs that it was like, God was like, hey, it's time.
Mm.
Hey, it's time, knock, knock, it's time. Like, this isn't your path anymore. And I was so stuck in my ego that I just kept fighting it. I was like, nope, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. And it was almost like God finally was like, okay, here's Cancer, because you're obviously not getting it. Like, let's go through this and let's like start to transition. And like, that surrender was the first time that I really truly felt like, okay, my hands are up, was when I was diagnosed, because you can't do anything. Like, the feeling I had when I was diagnosed with cancer while I was in Germany was first and foremost the craziest experience, because I was just overcome with peace. Like, it was a total peace moment of like, hey, this is going to be really hard and you have to go through it, but you're going to be okay. Like, this is just something you need to experience in order to become the highest version of yourself.
Mm.
And that was crazy. Like, that was like the moment of surrender for me.
Let's go there a little more. I heard you in another podcast say that cancer was the best thing that happened for me. I want you to take that mindset and just kind of talk about the journey, how it all happened, how you found out, what you went through. Talk about it a little bit, for the audience who might be like, you know, not not aware, first of all, of your story, but also not aware how it happens, right? How you
Right.
find out, how what you do, what the treatment's like what your mind goes through, you know. Take us on a little bit of a journey on all that.
All right. So once upon a time, no, there's definitely a lot to it that I haven't even shared with a lot of people, because there's just so many moments that you then start to remember. Um, but yeah, first and foremost, I was, obviously a professional volleyball player, super healthy. All I drank was water. I was very aware of what I was eating and putting into my body, vitamins, supplements, um, very aware. And so going in, I had just gotten back from the Philippines from a pro season, and I went to the doctor for my annual checkup, as I did every year. And, there were some concerns, but nothing crazy, nothing earth shattering. It was, hey, you're young, you're healthy, like bloating. I was bloated for one of them. And it was like, I was traveling all the time. I was eating all these weird foods. So of course I'm making those excuses. Right. But yeah, I'm 26 years old, no family history, healthy, pro athlete. Like, yeah, you're fine. And that was in July of 2017. Fast forward, I'm in Germany. It's December 2017. And I, in between that, I had a few things going on that was like, maybe this isn't normal, but I always made an excuse for it. Like, I was peeing a lot more, but I was like, I drink so much water, like, obviously. So it's just like those annoying little things that you're like, wow, and that's cancer? Really? You can't just like slap me across the face.
Mm.
And finally it was like, okay, you look like you're 2 months pregnant. Like you need to go to the doctor. And so I was like, okay, this is weird. So of course I go to the doctor and they're like, oh yeah, no, you're not pregnant. You have a giant tumor. And I was like, what? So in that moment, and I didn't expect it. I did not expect them to tell me I had a tumor.
Right.
So when they told me that I had a tumor, I immediately was like, I have cancer. And then she goes on and she's like, no, like, not all tumors are bad. This just is like, something that happens sometimes in women. And I was like, no, I had already decided, right? I was like, I'm I'm going in with this saying that I have cancer, because then if I don't, great. But if I go in with the mindset of, no, we're fine, and then I end up having cancer, it's like that is more earth-shattering and damaging to myself, to my mind, and how I'm approaching this right now than it is to just go and like expect the worst, hope for the best. So of course, then it's, yeah, you have it's stage 4. And they went through this process of like, we can do treatment here, you can get surgery. It needs to come out right away, but we can't get you in until the end of January because there's a long line and everyone's on holiday. And I was like, God ended up providing me with all of these things to come back to the United States was basically it. Flights, like there was one seat on the plane coming home. So, and then just a whole number of things happened where it was like, God was like, you need to go home. So I end up going to Montana. My surgery, I drive to Billings, Montana on Christmas Day with my mom and stay the night, wake up the next day. And that entire day, the 26th of December, 2017, was an absolute shit show. I went into that day expecting to get surgery at like 10 a.m. And I walk in to the cancer center and I get in line to check in, and I'm looking around the room, the waiting room, and it's like all these old women, bald, like just look sick. And I started to have a panic attack. Like I literally was like, oh my gosh, this is your life. Everyone in here is 60 years or older. Like, what are you doing here? This is not where I'm supposed to be. I can't believe it. Like I started having that moment. And I just had to take a deep breath and be like, remember that feeling of peace that I had when I was in Germany, when I was initially diagnosed. And you know what the worst part of this whole thing was, is when they told me I had cancer, my first thought was, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my hair. It wasn't even that, oh, you're going to die. It was literally, oh my gosh, I'm going to be bald. Like how sad that we live in a society where we're more concerned with our like physical appearance and vanity. And obviously, like a lot of my worth was tied to my appearance. And like, who thought I was attractive? Like, that's a whole nother conversation. But like, that was crazy. And I had to like check myself out of that and be like, dude, you're going to lose your hair because you're fighting for your life. Get over it. And I had that conversation with myself. But I remember walking into the waiting room and just being like, holy cow, this is your life now. And your mind can go so many ways. And if you don't have it in check, if you let your emotions run wild, and I'm not saying don't feel your emotions because that's not great either, but like if you let yourself go down this spiral of like, woe is me, I'm the victim, that's going to kill you, especially in a scenario where you have cancer and you're literally fighting for your life. Like people die because they don't have the will to survive, because they're just stuck in victim mindset. And like, this is happening to me. So like that whole day I had to like check myself back in, because it was like, I mean, it was literally like this. My mom was with me and we check in, go to the doctor. He does a checkup. I'm just being funny, Jen, because you got to laugh to keep from crying. And he's telling me, he's like, I walk into his office and he goes, hey, I can't really tell what it is on the film, but like, you're young and healthy. Like, let's not say you have cancer. And I literally looked at him dead in the face and I said, don't tell me I don't have cancer, because I've already decided that I do, and I'm determined to fight this, and it's not going to make my life decisions for me. But I need you to not tell me I don't have it, because you don't know that I don't. And he was like, okay, that's a good mindset to have, but I'm just saying. And I was like, nope, we've already decided. So like, let's do the CT scan. So we do the CT scan. He comes back and he's like, okay, you do have cancer. And I was like, yes, next step. And he's like, okay, let's figure out what kind of cancer it is, because that's going to depend on treatment. And my mom was like, okay, well, what's the best type? And he was like, okay, if it's ovarian or it's lymphoma, obviously lymphoma is going to be a lot better. Like the survival rate's better, treatment's easier. So let's do that. So we're like, okay, let's go into the biopsy, and we're hoping for lymphoma. I come out and they're like, okay, it's ovarian. So it was like, oh, could be lymphoma. Oh, it's ovarian. And then it was like, oh, okay. And his face is like, I mean, the ovarian's the silent killer, right? Like, and people who have ovarian cancer, it's a very slim chance. So of course, just chaos. And then it's like, let's do blood work. Let's figure out what type of ovarian. So then we go deeper, and it's like a very rare form of ovarian cancer. It's called dysgerminoma. Super rare. Don't really know how to treat it. It's like 1%, just very rare. And so he has no idea what to do. And he spends the rest of his day talking to his colleagues and everybody about how to treat this. What's the best thing to do? Do we do surgery or do we do chemo? And so it was like, I sat in the pre-surgery room for 3 hours thinking that I'm going to get surgery, but maybe we have to do chemo first. And it was like, which one's better? And it was like, just, we have no idea what's happening. And so then he comes in and he's like, okay, so we need to do surgery. We have no idea where it's spread. So we're going to have to like explore. It's called an exploratory laparotomy. We're going to have to cut you open and just see what we're dealing with. So at that point, I didn't know that I was stage 4. Like, we didn't know how bad it was. We didn't know what was going on. And basically I remember calling my dad, and, my mom's like, hey, she's about to go into surgery. We don't know what's going to happen. She could wake up in menopause. Like, she could wake up and not have anything. And because the tumor was on my right ovary. And at that point, it's like, it's spread everywhere, right? Like, you can pretty much expect that they're going to take everything. And I remember when they told me that, I had a literal panic attack, like, just lost it. And so we're on the phone with my dad, and he's asking questions. He's like, hey, can we salvage her eggs from the other ovary? And the doctor's like, well, at that point, if we have to take it out, there's no good eggs. So we're like, okay, we could wake up in menopause. Like, that's a real possibility here. But I guess at least I have my life, right? And so then my dad, this is where I just like lost it. I was like keeping myself from crying all day. And my dad just says, like, my mom was like, hey, do you want to say anything? And he just literally fell to his knees in my brother's arms and was like, I mean, and I've never heard my dad cry. And he just said, I love you so much. I cry. But it was like, in that moment, I was like, wow, this is really serious. Because going into that, it's like, wow, you could die on the table, And I just didn't think about any of these things, but it was like about to go into surgery. It just became very real,
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, like hanging up on my dad now. And then I just remember being wheeled into the surgery room and like, surrender. Like, you really are just like, I'm here. God has set me up perfectly to be here. And I just have to trust that whatever I'm going to wake up and whatever's happened is best case scenario. Everything's happening in my favor right now.
Yeah.
So then, they do all the things. I pass out and I wake up and I'm on drugs, obviously. Like, I'm like coming out of anesthesia. And I remember the doctor coming up to me and he puts his hand on my leg and he goes, well, you still have an ovary and a uterus. And I just was like, what? Like, this is crazy. But like, had spread everywhere else. Like, tell me how divine that is, that it did not spread to that other part of my body, but it was everywhere else. And I just remember being like, wow, that is a God thing. Like, the whole thing was just like, God was working for my best, like in my like best outcome possible. And so that, I know I'm just rambling.
No, it's okay.
But it just, that day was like so crazy and divine that like, I think the point is that if you let your mind go to that place, it will. And it's so hard to come out of it. Like I was determined to not let cancer dictate the things I was going to do. I told myself, I'm working out every single day. I love working out. It's my happy place. I'm going to do it. I was determined to still show up as Jen. Like, I'm not going to let this put my light out. Like, I'm going to be funny, sarcastic, like whatever, we're just doing it,
Yeah.
that was my mindset, was like, I am determined to not only beat this, but like, I'm going to become a better version of myself. And so for people who are maybe in a dark place where you have no idea what's going on, just remember your will to do anything is going to be stronger than whatever's going on.
Let's go.
Like, you can literally survive anything if you decide you want to.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for your vulnerability there, Jen. Wow. I mean, from that moment of finding out that you had cancer, finding out what was coming next, I want you to just explore a little bit more of your mindset to make it relatable to someone who's going through that right now. Talk to that person who just found out, or a relative, because not everyone has this champion mindset that we talked about first. That I'm sure that really helped you to get through this. But talk to that person who's about to go through this, who just found out, or a family member just found out. How can you best support that person right now?
It's so hard because I feel like my whole life, not my whole life, but my volleyball, everything that happened to me leading up to that point truly prepared me for the match of my life. You know what I mean? Like, everything that happened in my career, the injuries, the coaches, the like low-key mental, emotional abuse, like everything that I dealt with prepared me for that. And so I already had a solid foundation. But again, it's like, you can go either way.
Yeah.
Everyone has a choice to make. I could have allowed those things in my career to really affect me. I could have never played pro because it was too hard. And so we all have a decision that we get to make every single day. And it's like, how are you going to approach each situation? Is it going to be victim mindset where it's like, this is happening to me? Woe is me. Like, poor me. Why is God doing this? Why is the world doing this? The universe hates me. Like, that's so low vibe. Like, you're just stuck in this victim mode. Who wants to be there? Like, you don't actually want to be there. And if you do, then that's another entire conversation that you need to have with yourself, is like, do you want to be down there? Because you can decide at any moment that you don't want to be. And the decisions, it was those little decisions of like, I'm so determined to not let cancer dictate my life and my choices. I'm going to work out every day. Like, step one, do the things that you still love to do.
Right.
Like, working out inspired me. Having a goal after chemo, like, I literally tried to play pro volleyball in the Philippines in April. I wasn't even done with chemo, but having that goal got me through that. So yes, my entire existence revolved around me just simply surviving. And there were so many gut punches during chemo. I don't even know where to begin with that. But having a goal and deciding, like, you can let yourself feel bad for yourself for 5 minutes. I remember sitting in the Walmart parking lot at 26 years old, and I'm on Instagram and I see all my friends posting these like spring break, like I'm traveling, I'm on an island, whatever. And I'm just sitting there like, wow, this is some BS. Like, what did I do as a human to deserve this? I'm here bald. I've got a mask on. Someone just called me sir. Like, what the frick, right? And I turned my phone off and I was like, okay, you get 5 minutes and you get to say all the things that you want to say to yourself. You get to say how pitiful this is, and woe is me, like 5 minutes. And I set a timer. And as soon as the timer went off, I was like, okay, get your ass in Walmart. You're going to get what you need to get. And we're
Let's
going
go.
back home. Like,
Let's go.
it was like, decide, like, give yourself
Right.
5 minutes, find whatever, pity yourself, do what you need to do. But after the 5 minutes, like, you're going. You don't have time to
Love
be
it.
down in that hole for too long, because you're just going to keep digging and digging and digging, and it will literally kill you.
I really, really love the idea of the timer, right? Give yourself that opportunity. Go ahead and rant, let it out,
Yes.
scream, whatever you need to do. And then right when that's done, let's go, right? Let's
Yeah.
snap into what we got to do.
Yeah.
And talk quickly about, we didn't get to visualization when you were talking about winning, but talk about visualization in the rehab process. For me, I didn't go through anything you went through, but I did go through 2 surgeries on my knees. The second time was so challenging for me, but what really helped me was like, I visualized myself how I was going to be, what I was going to feel after. It was like a carrot. I dangled the carrot. That's where I'm going, right? Talk
Yeah.
about that. Like for the person, we're talking to the person right now that's about to go through this process, right?
Yeah.
Talk about how valuable it is to see see the ideal version of yourself after you get through this, to help you get through it.
Right. I mean, I had the goal of, you're going to play pro volleyball again. Like, you're going to travel again. You're going to play pro volleyball. You're going to be healthy. And I think just having that end goal is what established my day to day, because I knew I needed to work out. I knew I needed to get my mind right. I honestly think the reason I got through what I did was because I had one job. That's to survive. And I simply just trusted that God's hand was working beautifully in my life in every single moment. And like all the crazy stuff, it was like just having faith and surrendering and saying, hey, I am so out of control. Like, I have no part of this other than my mind, because my body is weak. My body is being poisoned every single day. Like, the only thing I have is my mind. And that, plus my faith, plus just like the determination, it all came down to, like, that's how I survived. And then one day I woke up and I was like done with chemo, didn't need another surgery. Like, this is done.
Let's go.
The craziest thing though was, this is something that I thought of. I was like, wow, it is so much easier to be dead than it is to be alive. And I mean that in the sense of, every day I had to go get chemo. I just had to go get chemo. Like, I was just there. I just had to survive, right? Like, I didn't have to think about my life. I didn't have to think about what I was going to be or do, or all those stressors that everyone deals with every single day, of like, this is what I'm expecting of myself. And then there's the anxiety. Like, I literally just went in and I was like, hey guys, like, I'm ready for my juice. Like, let's pump it in. And after I was healthy, I was like, oh shit, what am I going to do with my life? Like, who am I going to be? What am I supposed to do? Like, that was harder than it was to go and get chemo every day, because I was like lost. I like had to restart, and I had no idea who I was anymore. And that was really, really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to transition into this idea of personal growth and how you were able to grow from this experience. And then we'll get into the water thing. I want to kind of go on this journey of personal growth, and kind of how this whole experience really helped you to go from any sort of victim mindset that you may have had. Because it sounds like you didn't really have that. It sounds like you had this champion mindset, which was awesome. But I would like to talk about how this really made you become committed to being on this path of being the best version of yourself, right? Because that's what I really respect. Because things happen to all of us, and especially this situation that you're talking about. This is such a deep, emotional, almost life-threatening situation, but it catapulted you, seemingly.
Yes.
It puts you on this path of like, let's go.
Yes.
right? And that's what I would love to explore more of, because like I said before, like in this other podcast, you said cancer was the best thing that happened for me. So talk about that, how it was the best thing that happened for you, how it got you on this path of personal growth.
I'll go back to that quote that was told to me last year, was it's harder to change when you're winning.
Yeah.
If I would have never gotten cancer, I would probably still be desperately trying to play indoor volleyball. I'd try to be on the Olympic team. I'd be putting my body absolutely through it. I would have never found the water. I would have never started my business. I would have never started playing beach volleyball. Like, I say never, that's harsh, but honestly, if I would have kept going on the same path, I don't even want to think about it.
Hmm.
Because cancer, it just began this journey of, it's almost like the chemo killed everything in my body, right? But it also killed everything that was maybe not serving me in my life. Like,
Hmm.
I had a fresh start to start filling myself back with these things that I did truly love, that I enjoyed, that I felt like I was called to do, like how I was supposed to show up, all of these things. And I mean, I literally got out of a toxic relationship. I beat chemo. I survived my father passing. Like, all of these things led me to starting my own business
Hmm.
and maybe having boundaries and not taking certain, not taking things in relationships. Like, I was stuck at one point, even after chemo. Like, I kept going down. I kept going downhill. I was like stuck and lost. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I was absolutely miserable. And it was like the decision to be like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And
Yeah.
finally, COVID hit, and I was forced out of things that I wasn't supposed to be doing. And then it was like the decision. Like, I tell everyone I work with, there is a decision you make when one day you're just sick of it, you're fed up, you're not accepting this from yourself anymore. Like, you know that you deserve better, you know you can do better. It's scary and you're going to have to put yourself out there, but that decision is what will change your entire life. And it sounds so cliche, but it's truly just the decision to be like, this isn't what I'm meant to do anymore. Like,
Right.
I am meant for greater.
Right. Yeah, it's so relatable. It's kind of why I started this whole project, right? It's
Yeah.
why I became an author and why I'm doing what I'm doing now, and because I made a decision. And so
Yes.
I totally feel that. So let me ask you this. What does it mean to say yes to your true self?
It's just empowering. It's scary. Don't get me wrong. It's so scary. Like, I
Right.
remember with the water and the business, I remember getting my machine, and even after everything it did for me and my body post chemo, I was so scared to show up online a certain way because I didn't want people to think that I was a scammer, or I was just trying to sell something, or, whatever. Like, I literally did not talk about it because I was scared of what other people would think,
Mm.
which is hilarious to think about because I was on there bald as can be. Like, I had little like stray hairs. I had like male pattern balding syndrome, and I didn't care. Like, I grew out of that. However, it was still the thought of like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think of me? And that, like, let me tell you, that absolutely died. But that was like a real fear of mine. Um, and then finally, when I said yes to myself and like what I wanted to do to live in, like how I wanted to show up to the world, when I said that, it was like there was no going back. Something just clicked in my brain where it was like, you don't care. You don't actually care what these people have to say, because if people are going to say something, they're probably miserable.
Right.
You're probably triggering them because you're going after something that a lot of people don't have the balls to do.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, and that's the reality, is like, people who are so focused on themselves and who are working on themselves and doing these big things, they're so worried about themselves that they're not actually looking at you and judging you. Those are the people that are like, wow, you're doing it. This is incredible. Even if you
Yeah.
haven't made a single penny,
Right.
those are the people that are like, oh man, I've been there. Like, keep going.
Yeah.
It's the people that are like, you're a scammer, or like, you're doing this for attention, or, just when people start saying things like that, that's the reflection of like, oh, this is interesting because I know that I'm not. And I know that you're saying that because I'm bothering you by showing up in the highest version of myself.
I I love that you said this is interesting. Actually, this is very relatable to anyone who's experiencing judgment coming at you.
Yes.
Instead of reacting, you could actually just say, "That's interesting." It's actually really empowering.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny too, because like if someone actually ever throws shade on you or gives you
Oh,
hate or something, and you're like, "Oh, that's interesting."
oh,
You know,
yes,
I
dude.
heard that
Like,
recently, and I was like, "That's actually genius."
yeah, no, because it is. It is. If you can get out of your own way and your own ego, and you're receiving these things from these people, but like, wow, that's so interesting
That's
because you
interesting.
know
Yeah.
that it's not about you.
But it's cool because you can actually take it as fuel, right? Be like,
Yes.
oh, actually, yeah, I could use that. I can make that useful rather
Yes.
than get reactive and being like, F you. It's like, no, that's
Yep.
interesting. I'm gonna think about that. I gotta go
I
over here
tell
now. I gotta go this way though.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah,
leave, but like,
yeah. But
this is
that's
really
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I tell everyone I work with, like when people start projecting onto them about the water or the business or whatever, it's like being able to take a step back and be like, oh my gosh, I must be doing something right. Like if people are seeing me and getting mad, like I must be doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get to the water. But first, the last thing I want to ask about this personal growth journey, and I have to because um it's humor, right? Because you use humor in this really awesome way where it keeps you light,
Yes.
right? Ever since we met, I was like, oh, she's funny, but it's like this lightness. It's like this light humor. I got to ask you about that because it's so, what it does for me is it just lightens the mood. Even when we
Yeah.
talk about this deep cancer journey that you've been on, or winning a championship, or becoming successful in business, you got to stay light.
Yes.
Talk
It's
about that
lit
a little bit.
it's literally what I mean, it got me through cancer. It got me through a lot. And it's easier said than done, right? But like obviously not everyone's going to be as funny as I am. But no, I remember going into the chemo center, the cancer center every single day, just the same person. And my nurses started to become concerned. Like I remember one day,
Why?
because I was just Jen all the time. I would literally walk in and I'd be like, what's up? Like, hey, and
Yeah, yeah.
I would just like walk around and I literally slept. I mean, it was like 6 hours every time I went in. So I would just literally sleep. And it's like my nap time. But that's like what I called it, right? Was like, oh, I'm getting my juice. I'm gonna take a nap and then I'm gonna go walk 3 miles and then I'm gonna go work out and like do it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I remember one day walking in and I would just always make jokes, right? Like the first day I went in to get chemo, they pumped me full of this stuff that's supposed to help you with nausea. I was allergic. Soon as they pump it in, my entire body turns beet red. My veins are popping out. I feel sick to my stomach. I can barely breathe. And I'm laughing. I'm literally, this is happening to my body and I'm dying laughing. And like, this is hilarious. It was day one. And I was like, wow, is this how this is going to go? Like, just laughing. And everyone is like looking at me like, is she going to die? Like, is she about to explode? And then all of a sudden it just like went away. But I was like, what the heck just happened? And they were like, oh, you're very allergic to that. So we need to not give you that. And I was like,
Good to,
cool.
good
What
to know.
else?
Yeah, good to know.
I was like, what else? But I just remember walking in one day and they came and they sat down and they were like, because every day there's a mental check-in for obvious reasons for cancer patients. They're like, how are you doing?
Mhm.
Tell us, any pain physically, but also like mentally, what's going on up there. And every day it was like, I'm great. I'm great. Best day of my life. I'm great. And one day they're like, how are you really? And I was like, is this a trick question? I'm fine. And they were like, no. They were like, it's okay to not be fine sometimes, And in that
Mhm.
moment when they said that to me, I was like, but it's also okay. It's also okay to be fine.
Yeah.
Like I'm supposed to not be okay right now, right? And you're almost encouraging me to not be okay, but I'm doing great. Like it's
Yeah.
okay to be okay. It's okay to go through some really hard times and be okay. It's okay to uh be okay in really terrible situations, you know, not that it's not okay, but I think it's almost like the misery loves company,
Mm,
you know? And I think we should encourage people to show their true, authentic, joyful, blissful selves all the time.
mm.
Instead of like, I want to see this person be down because it's like I'm feeling down. You know what I mean?
That's
Uh,
case in point for the whole project of what I'm doing. That's
yeah,
exactly, I couldn't agree more. That's it. We don't
yeah,
have to like sit in our problems so long. We don't have to sit in the misery. You know, we can acknowledge it. We don't have to be inspired the whole day, you
no,
know, but to be on that trajectory, you know, to be on that pathway, right?
yeah,
To be supported by others who are on that pathway too. That's it, Jen.
yes,
That's it, right?
yeah. Yeah, that was a big moment for me though, was like they were so concerned because they thought I was faking it, which I know a
Right,
lot of people
right,
do. That's a mental health is a whole nother thing.
right, right, right.
But like me deciding that I'm great every single day again was like what got me through.
Yeah.
And my humor and like making jokes,
Yeah, yeah.
that got me through.
Yeah, totally.
So
It's
yeah.
so cool. It's so cool. I love your humor. It's funny.
I mean, dude, I
You're
am
just
literally
you. You're you.
yeah, and I translated it into my business and I am the only person doing what I do. Like that's how you stick out is like what is a gift of yours and integrate it into what you're doing.
Perfect segue to let's talk about this living water journey now. Let's get into that.
Mhm.
So be a little brief here. Talk about how you were first. Well, first of all, what is living water? What is structured water and how you found it? And then we'll go from there.
Okay, I'll just start with how I found it. My friend introduced me to it like a year and a half prior to being diagnosed, and I tried it and I started detoxing and I'm like this water is for sick people,
Mm,
sick old people, like I don't need this. This is, you know, whatever. And of course, a year and a half later I'm diagnosed with cancer and I like went to my friend. I was like, "Hey, not sure if you've seen what's going on." And he was like, "Hey." You know, so that was a very humble moment for me. Um, but I pretty much invested in my machine right away. And the machine, the easiest way to describe it to people is like, imagine someone is in an ambulance and they pass away. Well, what do? They take a defibrillator and they pump you with electricity, right? They shock you to bring you back to life, to restart your heart. Well, that's essentially what the machines are doing to water. It's literally giving life back to water. And when I say life, I mean voltage. Like water that comes up from the earth is charged from the earth's ions. That's voltage. Like, and we are electric beings. There is a certain level of resonance in everything that we do, and it affects our whole being,
mm,
right? So, like talking about high vibration, low vibration, alignment, all of those things, like it's all voltage.
mm.
And so, living water is water that has voltage.
Wow.
Super
A-
interesting. I could go
And
further, but I won't.
we'll talk about structured water. What's the difference there?
Structured water is essentially, if you think about the processes that water goes through nowadays, like pipes, purification, all of those things, it's basically taking the structure of water and it's just like, bleh. It's like if you were to eat fast food or food that you just microwave and expect to get the same nutritional value as whole food. So like that food that's been microwaved or it's processed, like what really is the nutritional value there?
Mm,
It's been so purified and like torn apart and created into this like thing. It's processed, it's dead. There's no living aspect to it. So structured water is essentially like an ice crystal. Like, and it's actually water. So when the water is structured a certain way, it's able to actually penetrate our cells because it's small enough to get in there, which is why a lot of people detox when they start drinking it. Because it's actually your body's able to basically absorb it.
hmm It's so cool. And talk about, let's get into some of the benefits that you experienced on your journey to finding this living structured water through these machines.
Yeah.
What shifted for you? What happened? What did you notice?
The benefits. Well, I just want to say again, I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. These are not medical claims. This is just like my own personal testimony, what I found
Yeah.
when I started providing my body with the right environment.
Mhm.
Obviously, my situation was extreme. I had just gone through chemo and cancer. And so I had all these things like neuropathy, brain fog, migraines, vertigo, appetite change, you name it.
Phew.
Yeah, really bad stuff to where I was like, I'm not going to survive this. And, I started drinking the water and pretty much all of those side effects started to go away. Right. And I was like, I didn't even understand why at that point. I remember I just purchased the machine because it was a total faith buy. And so, I started drinking the water and it's like the water is then providing my body with the foundation to start detoxing. And so, I mean, that's when I started researching, like, what the heck is this actually doing?
Mm.
And from then on, it was like things that people deal with every day: anxiety, ability to focus, recovery for athletes. I can't tell you the last time that I was truly sore from like working out, like really sore to the point that you're like, oh, I can't do it today.
Hmm.
I've never cramped. I've never cramped in a beach volleyball game, which is like, that's pretty huge. Or practice. Like I've literally never cramped. Nutrient absorption. I mean, there's a number of things, but I would say for me personally, obviously it was the coming out of the chemotherapy, but then the ability to focus. Like I struggled my entire life being able to focus on things. And all of a sudden it's like, now I'm actually absorbing information and learning because I am structured water. This is crazy.
It's really interesting because, where my mind goes in this conversation is a couple different ways. Number one, we are mostly water, right? It's the one thing that is like the lowest common denominator for all of us, right?
Yes.
We have to drink a lot of water every single day.
Yep.
Right. And so like, that's when we first opened up this conversation a long time ago, I was like, man, that it's really interesting to first of all, be aware of the water source. If I'm gonna drink water every single day, I need to know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Right. I need to also be aware of what perhaps is in it. Right. From the tap here in LA, like, I don't know if that's great.
Yeah.
Right. And then the third thing is like, well, how can I get the best possible water, even for like a shower? Like if I'm gonna be in water all the time, like maybe I should think about having the best possible solution and not just whatever. I'm just, like, because I think what I'm getting at is we don't know.
Right.
That's kind of what I'm getting at when I turn on my faucet. First of all, thank you. It's a blessing that my water comes out, because I know that's not the case for a lot of people,
Right.
especially in outside of the country. But here, thank you. That's the first thing. We go to gratitude. The second thing is like, I wonder what's in this.
Yeah. And
You
people
know?
don't think about it. People don't
Yeah.
think, but it's also with food. Like think about like, this is literally what's fueling our body.
Right.
And people just don't ask the questions of how is this made? Where is this coming from?
Yeah.
What's in it?
I think it's important. It's really important to start to think about. You helped me to start thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to just grab, like, I have a regular filter in my fridge, but there's multiple layers. I've been doing research and there's multiple layers of this, right? And there's a lot to explore.
Yes.
I actually want to take this conversation slightly in a different direction, which is the Dr. Masaru Emoto and water consciousness, right? Because it's one thing to have structured water and living water. That's great. It's another thing to actually try to transform that water and to give it an intention. And I know that sounds weird. It might sound strange for a lot of people listening, but there is actually a science behind this. He published a book called The Message from Water. I wanted to know from you if you're aware of the science behind his work and if you implement that into your regimen.
Yes. Well, that's why mindset is so important, because the things that we're telling ourselves, that's affecting the structure of the water inside ourselves.
Yeah.
Like literally. And it sounds crazy because that can have such an impact on people. But like, I mean, think of all the cheesy sayings like words are powerful, words cast spells, that's why it's called spelling, or like thoughts become things. Like that's all real. So, and the science behind it is he has taken certain words, certain music, and he has played it around water, and then he takes a picture of the water structure, the crystal structure of the water. When it's things like I hate you, or anger, like an emotion of like anger or anxiety, depression, things like Hitler, like all of those, heavy metal music, for
Yeah,
example.
right. And
When
first classical music. Yeah.
Yes. And when he played it around this water structure, it was just like chaos. Like there was no real structure. It was broken. It was damaged. But then love, prayer, classical music, like things like that. It was like these beautiful crystalline structures.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. And
Yeah.
you think about that and it's like, dude, that right there shows you that anything you say to yourself, and I am so bad about this, especially during volleyball, everyone knows I like cuss myself out. It's really not good. I call myself really mean names. I've gotten a lot better, but like those things matter. The way that you speak to yourself, to others, like that matters. And it's literally affecting your body, your water body, as we call it in the water community.
Yeah.
Your body is water, let's be real. But people don't think about that. Like people don't know how much of an impact that actually makes. And the structure, so why structure is so important is because the more structured your water, the more easily programmed too. So like water is like a computer, right? It's like a software that you can like program. And if it's just chaos, then you're going to be chaos. Like if the water within you is just broken, it's chaotic, there's no real structure, then that's what you're going to be. If it's structured and you're saying these really things, doctors have found that the structure of water inside a cell can actually tell them how healthy someone is.
Wow.
So that right there tells you, okay, if I have structured water in my cells, I'm good. I'm healthy. I'm saying the right things. I'm doing the right things. If the structure of the water is broken, then there's something going on. Like we need to fix it. Like that is wild.
Yeah, it is. It is. I know we're coming up on time here, but I would encourage listeners to follow Jen on Instagram. It's kind of like your main hub, I would say, for the water wizard, right? Yeah. For all things water. And you know, I would like to land the plane with well, just real before I go to that, just really talk briefly really quick about how you became a water wizard and just remind people of your IG.
Well, I became a water wizard because I remember when COVID hit and I was fired from my jobs and I had nothing and I had to find a way to pay bills. I remember asking God, I was like, how do you want me to show up? How do you want me to show up? How do you want me to impact the world? What do you want me to do? And I just thought, that's when I thought of my brand. And I was like, I had a wizard hat on and I just became the water wizard. And it was like this different way of doing these experiments where like, there are so many people out there doing the same thing, right? That doesn't mean that there's not enough room for everyone. It just means that you need to find a way to stick out.
Yeah.
And that was my way of sticking out, was like, here's this girl shamelessly putting on a wizard hat and beard and just like full force going for it and consistently doing it. Yeah. It started as a joke, which most things do, but it became the water wizard. Like that's now people literally know me as the water wizard.
Yeah. I love it.
And I really branded myself and I stick out, and people literally have said, I bought machines from you because you are the water wizard, because you just show up as you. And I was like, wow, that's awesome.
That is awesome. But I'm just visualizing your next tournament playing in a wizard hat.
Yeah. Because Grinch season is over. Grinch we have to wait until December.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Jen, oh yeah, just mention your IG handle one more time, please.
Oh yeah, it's Genuine Waters. So hilarious. JENNUINE, Jen UN, and then Waters.
Yeah, it's a great IG account. And there's more details about all these machines and more information there. But as we land the plane, I want you to think back to this whole conversation, which was really, really powerful, and describe to me fulfillment. What does fulfillment mean to you?
Living in alignment, living with purpose. There was an experiment conducted where it was like, if people live and feel like they have a purpose, they're so much happier. And so whatever
Yeah.
your purpose is, whatever you feel like it is, and take a second. If you don't know what it is, I remember at my job, just like walking around being like, wow, this is not my purpose. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel so unfulfilled. Think about what makes you happy. Think about how can you turn your passion into purpose? Like, what have you been through? How can you help people? I think is the big question. How can you help people? How can you make an impact? Because that helping people, like, I don't do what I do for the money. Yes, I need to make a living, but those text messages I get from people who had just purchased a machine who said, holy cow, Jen, this is incredible. Like, that is why I do what I do. That's fulfillment.
Let's go. Let's go. Jen, what an amazing conversation. For those of you listening, thank you for making it this far. And please comment, please engage, right? Let us know what your takeaways were from this conversation. And I'll make sure Jen is aware of any comments or questions, and so we can engage back, because that's the whole idea of this. But for everyone listening, I appreciate you. Jen, I appreciate you too. Don't go anywhere, okay? Everyone else, thank you so much. Please, 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 please stay inspired, everybody. Much love. Peace and blessings.